Well, here he is, the man of the moment. We've been waiting all morning. Old friend and colleague of mine, brilliant royal correspondent, fantastic author. His book, Our King, Charles III, the Man and the Monarch Revealed. Here it is. Robert Jobson's book is out today, and Robert Jobson is in the studio. Thanks very much for coming in, Robert.
I nearly didn't make it because I think it's nearly 60. That's a long walk from Kipling Street.
I'm going to say you're nearly 60 round the waist, mate, but...
that's the problem.
Listen, congratulations on an excellent book.
Thanks, mate.
I obviously haven't had a chance to read it, but I read the brilliant serialisation in the Daily Mail. And first of all, I have to get your take on what you feel about the fact that Harry has finally revealed he's coming to the coronation, but Meghan isn't.
Well, I thought it was rude that they didn't reply in the first place within the RSVP, but I think it's a good decision. I think it's pragmatic. I don't think there's been any apologies, put it that way, demands of this, demand of that. I don't think that's happened. I think it's a pragmatic decision that obviously the Sussexes made together. She's not coming, looking after the kids are very young, and I think that's wise as well. And, everyone seems to blame Meghan for everything, it does seem to be, in this country, because Harry's Diana's son. But actually, I think a lot of this is down to Harry and his petulance, and, at the end of the day, she's probably a little scared to come here and get booed and picked on, and it become a tabloid issue, a major, big issue that really would detract from the coronation anyway. So in a way, I think it's a good decision by them.
Well, that was what I found fascinating in your book, that, of course, the narrative has always been, all of these shenanigans, Megxit and, them dropping out of the royal family, going to California, their controversial new life, that it's all down to, domineering Meghan.
Yeah.
But you say in your book, you reveal in your book, that no, that isn't necessarily the case, that Harry has been very much a mover and shaker in all of this as well.
I think a lot of the problem with Meghan came from her untruth bombs, as I call them, in Oprah Winfrey, which was littered with, dare I say it, lies, things that weren't true. Even the Archbishop of Canterbury had to correct them on saying that they'd had a secret marriage. And he said, well, no, you didn't, otherwise I'll be in the hot water. So, and maybe a lot of it was down to her lost in translation. I don't know. I'm not American, I don't know, but it does seem that since that moment, the British turned on her, not so much him. But I think that he probably is more of a driving force, and we only now realise that with all this stuff going on with him turning up in court over the case against the Daily Mail at the High Court. He didn't need to be there. He turns up and on a time when his father is on an important state visit. So I think that we maybe should be looking more closer to home and to the way that Harry's behaving, rather than picking on Meg, because I think actually she's probably just quite content saying, oh, it's like going to a Christmas dinner, isn't it? You've got to go to the in-laws dinner and you say, and you had an almighty row in the family and you just don't want to turn up.
Yeah, it's interesting, that the media over here and in America as well has probably been a little unfair to Harry insofar as we've always depicted him as the henpecked husband, doing exactly what he's told, this powerful woman saying, do this, do that. But you're right, when we saw him coming over to the court, because he's taking action against the Mail on Sunday, or the Associated Newspapers, he's clearly a driving force.
I think so. Yeah. I think so. And I think that, why would he suddenly go from being the cheeky Harry that we all sort of said, but this army captain that was a leader and praised by his men that fought alongside him in Afghanistan, strong man who fought against the army hierarchy, say, I must go on the front line, even though he could have taken a pen-pushing job somewhere. No, he's someone who's quite determined. I mean, he's got his mother's determination there, and he's got his father's determination too. So, look, I'm not saying that Meghan's faultless, but I think she's certainly not the Wicked Witch of the North or South, whatever it is.
Well, as a journalist, and I'm sure you feel the same, Rob, I really wanted both of them to come to the coronation. But as a citizen of this country and a loyal subject of King Charles, I think we're all pretty relieved that she's not coming, and I would imagine that Charles and the royal family are relieved as well.
I think the King, His Majesty, will be thrilled that both his sons are going to be there, because it's his moment of destiny, and I think it's right that both your sons are there, as well as your wife, the Queen Camilla. And I think he'd have been very disappointed if Harry hadn't turned up. Now, is there going to be relief? Yeah, I mean, I say in my book that Catherine, Princess of Wales, found it very difficult to do that Fab Four walkabout.
Yeah, no, that was a great revelation.
And she confided that, and the very fact that that's awkward, orcs, as they say, the young kids today.
Hashtag orcs.
Hashtag orcs, and I think that'll be the same for Queen Camilla, really, because at the end of the day, there's the women there would have to, in their royal family, a bit like Sophie, for example, she was turned down to be asked by the Queen to be a mentor, and Meghan said, "No, I don't want that. I've got Harry." All these things that the women really would be quite difficult place to go for Meghan.
So, we're hearing that the King is very thrilled that Harry is coming, despite all the brickbats he's been throwing at the royal family over the last couple of stormy years, calling the royal family racist, his dad mean.
Well, then he pulled back on that, didn't he? So
that's right, he did.
Deeply unconscious bias. But there's a great revelation in this book about, which Ken Wolfe, my old pal, the Diana's bodyguard, said they went out on Diana arranged for them to have a tour of London on a red bus. And on the bus, there was a Punjabi bus conductor with a big yellow turban. And Harry kept, every time the guy rang the bell, they rang the bell for someone to get off, because they were on with ordinary punters. He then made this, he mocked the guy, this sort of as 8-year-olds were. I'm not going to say on radio what he said, but he basically...
Let's not do that,
I've had enough trouble. But he said something, and Diana got him off the bus and gave him a clip round the ear for doing it. Said, "Don't you ever say anything like that again, or be racist again." And that, we talk about unconscious bias. I think she nearly knocked him unconscious, according to Ken. But then afterwards, it's not as Diana would. She asked him to write a letter to Ken to thank him for everything. Wrote him a letter, said, "Thank you so much, Ken, for waking this day. I'm sorry I behaved like I did." And then he ended it, signed it, Harry, and then afterwards he put the phrase that he used on the bus.
Well, I mean, he was a mischievous kid, but it's interesting you just say Diana.
But he was a kid. That's the point.
Yeah, exactly. He's only 8 years old. We'll cut him some slack on that one. But it's interesting that his mum stepped in, because in those days we weren't quite, as a nation, quite so sensitive about racism.
Well,
So
she was stepped in, but so did the King. I mean, the King would have been furious on Prince of Wales. Yeah. There's one thing. I mean, Kevin, we were around at the time, and
we were,
and they disagreed on a lot of things. Charles and Diana. There was the famous War of the Waleses, but they certainly agreed on one thing: that their kids were not going to be racist and would be picked up on it if they were.
Well, good for them. Now, as I say, the King is thrilled that Harry is coming, and probably very relieved that Meghan isn't. So there's been. Usually is, in these situations, talk of rapprochement. Now, there's not going to be any rapprochement between William and Harry, is it? The feuding brothers. That is a bitter rift, isn't it?
I can't see that one healing over a ping-pong visit by Harry to London. He's in and out in a flash, I'm sure.
And where do you think, I mean, I'm just sort of picking your brains here, but where do you think Harry might sit in the congregation? There have been quips that he'll be back in the back row next to his wicked uncle, Prince Andrew.
I don't think they've probably worked that all out yet. I mean, I think that this is an important occasion for the King. They're both his sons, I suspect. Like the seating arrangements for the memorial service for the Duke of Edinburgh, I think the children will be in the front. All the children, including Andrew, are in the front row, and I think that in that case, so will Harry.
As you alluded to earlier, I think Catherine, I always call her Kate, she doesn't like that, does she? Catherine, the Princess of Wales, she will be very relieved that Meghan isn't coming. And let's face it, she can't stand her, can she? Come on, that's true, isn't it?
All I'd say is this, in this book about the King.
No, we're going to go on with the King in a minute.
Yes, look, I think, put it this way, Catherine is raised by a great family. She's a middle class girl that's held her own in this family for a long time. I think that she would be able to handle anything.
Okay, I'd say she'll be pleased that her nemesis is not coming. Let's talk. It's about our King. It's about King Charles, and a very timely book it is too. Before we go into a few details, what kind of you must have met him a few times. What kind of a bloke is he? What kind of a man is he?
Oh, he's a deep-thinking, spiritual man, a man I think is thoroughly decent. I know that there are people say, how can you be thoroughly decent if you've been divorced and you cheated on Diana with Camilla? Well, we're all human. I mean, I've been married a few times.
Yeah, so, trying to count there.
Yeah, I just thought what I'm not going to admit to. But the fact is, what I'm saying is that he takes his duty very seriously. He not only cares, though, he's a deep-thinking man in terms of the planet too. And I think we're really blessed, actually, at this stage we're at with climate change and all the stuff that's going on, with somebody who cares about that, who cares about the Commonwealth, and therefore can link that role as head of the Commonwealth together with a third of the world's population are influenced to make a difference when it comes to the planet that we're all on. And let's face it, it's not the planet will survive, it's just whether we survive on it.
That's for sure. And we know that one of his deep hatreds is confrontation. He's a great man for the quiet life. He's a man of the country more than the city.
Yeah, I mean, somebody that, I think that it's easy to be at one with nature if you've got homes.
You've got that garden at Highgrove, yeah.
But it's less easy if you're in the middle of the East End somewhere, to be at one with nature. But things are improving. There are things that go on there. But I think that he's certainly, for example, on the cusp of destiny when his mother was very, very poorly, coming towards the end of her life. Princess Royal was with her. He went back. The doctor said that there's no change. Went back to Birkhall and just went off with his walking stick and a basket. Coppers, these bodyguards left him alone. He went into the forest to pick mushrooms. The people might think, oh, what a ridiculous thing to do. But what he's doing is at one with nature. The River Mick is flowing in the background. The birds are singing. Well, why not?
And that's his perfect environment. How hurtful has it been to the king to see this, to be honest with you, escalating bitter feud between his two beloved sons?
Well, I'm a dad. I know Dad would hate it, wouldn't you? I mean, you'd hate it. But, luckily I've got one son, so his only feud is going to be with himself. But I'd say it must be terribly painful because, he's got to wear two hats. One of them's a crown, but, he's always going to be a dad to both these boys. And he would want them, and has implored them both, to heal this rift and would hope it would go away. But, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink.
What's the future for the king? He must have been, he's obviously a very forgiving guy, because we learned today that he's thrilled, to use a quote, royal sources and all that his darling boy is coming to the coronation. But after what's been going on and the spare, Harry's book levelling all sorts of allegations against his dad, he's mean, wouldn't give me any money, he's a racist and so on and so forth. His capacity for forgiving is enormous, is it not?
Well, he's the Supreme Governor of the Church of England, so forgiveness is
part of the job, yeah. But I mean, seriously, because Harry levelled a lot of charges,
he did. But actually, when you read Spare, I know you would have thought with an expensive Etonian education he could have probably written it himself, but he had to get someone to write it for him. But if you read it, I think that the king actually doesn't come out of it that badly. I think that he comes out of it. He clearly loved his son, my darling boy, and he clearly did everything he could, but he was a very busy man, and he was older dad and was probably a little bit, he had a difficulty because he had a wife in Diana that they were clearly not together, and she was dominating that role as the parent. So I think that he did everything he could in the circumstances that he was in.
So this is your book. It's Our King, Charles III, The Man and the Monarch, by Robert Jobson, Sunday Times best-selling author. When I read this, and I will, what do you think I might learn about our sovereign?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the serialisation in the Mail on Sunday covered a lot of the stuff that the newspapers would want to cover, but I think you need to read it in its entirety rather than stopping at a particular bit, and I think you will learn a lot about him. I think you'll learn a lot about his honesty, you learn about his desire for duty, and really, I think you'll learn also of his great capacity and patience to deal with situations that he's dealing with here. But most of all, I think you'll realise that he's the man for the moment. He's the man to be the king, the first king of the 21st century, and he will make the world a better place if he can.
Just a last word, Rob. his relationship with his mother was at times quite strained, but he seemed absolutely devastated when she died. I mean, hardly surprising that a woman of 95, you know, departs this mortal coil. But Charles was... looked as if he was devastated.
Well, I mean, you know, we all... Well, anyone who's lost a parent knows it doesn't matter if they're... Yeah. I mean, my dad was only 62, but, you know, it doesn't matter if they're 62 or 96. You are absolutely distraught. Yeah, yeah. And I think that both the loss of his father and his mother is... talk about it in the book. It was the last farewells. I think once his father parted, and I think it was they'd healed any problems they'd had at the end. But with his mother, I think he knew her time was up and coming to an end, and he spent every time he could. Had dinner with her at Windsor. They spent a lot of time talking, and I think any issues that were there, they were certainly gone by the time she passed.
A last quick question. It's been great talking to you. Thanks so much for getting in here. How long did it take you to write?
To write, not that long, probably 8 months, something like that. But to research it, I've been thinking about it for many years. I wrote a book called Charles at 70, and I felt that I wanted to do it a different way. I wanted to... In that book, I didn't talk about the Diana years and all that. I just was talking about what he did at 70. This one is a very chronological book and an excellent editor. Lots of new stories in it, lots of new insights. But thanks to Barry Johnson, he turned it into English, so that's good.
Come on, you're a good writer. How many people did you talk to? How many people did you interview?
Quite a lot of people, but I never talk about sources, you know.
I wasn't going to get you to name them.
Well, they've tried. Richard Madeley tried. He said, where'd you get this? I said, as Harry Arnold used to say, the king asked him where you get his story from, and he went, there's one, there's another one.
Yeah, and that's how you do it. Rob, thanks so much for coming in. Robert Jobson, royal author.